I Googled you and found you. And he said, I'm so glad I did because he said, I wanted to share with you, all you done. And
That's a wonderful story, right?
It's those little things that keep me finding my way back to the Orange County line.
Welcome to the Y with Dr. T. And I am so excited that today I have Tim Key with us. And for most of you may know Tim from a long history of music and music education and teaching so many of our Orange County youth. So, Tim, thank you for being here.
you're welcome. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it a whole lot. Yeah.
Well, one of the reasons that I wanted you to be on here is because I want you to talk about the importance of music to a community. Why is music so important the way
Well,
that you see it?
I'll tell you what, it gives kids, especially, a way out. Um, Really on my own experience, but they um, go through an awkward age and they can turn to their music and they can go to their room and they can create whatever they want to create. Then you move on up, you get into adults, and adults find that really satisfying as well because they can retire and they get busy. They get busy. I always have people that say, "Oh, I want lessons, but I'm going to retire." Well, they get busy when they retire, but they sometimes they eventually come around because they run out of things to do. So it's really good for them because they sometimes they lose a loved one, you know, and so they need something to do to fill that void. And it's fun to watch them, and it's fun to see the difference between a 3-year-old and an 86-year-old. There's not much, a whole lot of difference between all the adults and all the kids and everybody. To tell you the truth, they all had this one thing that they always say: "I'll never learn. I'll never learn." So you'll never learn anything, right? So that's the biggest object that I have to get over, obstacle, is to get them to be a little more supportive of themselves. And sometimes kids, you know, they can talk and talk and talk, but it's just good to have somebody to listen. And I get some students and even adults, as far as that goes, they pay to learn music, but sometimes we'll sit there for the whole half hour and they start talking. And I just sit there and listen. Don't say anything. Just sit there and listen and just shake my head because I'm not a counselor. I don't have a doctor's degree, so I'm not going to advise them. But I just ask, just some simple questions. What do you think about that? And all things like this. So, and I had a boy the other day. He's 13, and he said, it's about time to quit lessons. I said, hey, we need to do something. We need to play. You're paying for these lessons. Your parents are. And he said, well, I'm not done talking yet. So I said, well, that's what you need. That's what you need. So, we just left it at that. He said, we'll play next week. So, okay. So, it's all good, and it all helps everybody. I can be working on the place there and on our place and doing some things that needs to be done and working because I would work too. And in the morning I might be working and I said, man, I don't want to quit and go teach. I just want to be by myself all day and just work. Get in the studio and within 10, 15 minutes, we start playing some songs. Totally attitude change. I couldn't wait now to get to the next student and we have fun. So that's how music gets you going. I mean, it can really change your attitude real fast and have some fun.
Yeah.
So,
So there's so much there, but I want to back it up. I want to talk about you. How'd you get in
well, there again,
music?
it comes to the kids as an awkward age, and that's how I can relate. So, it was about in February, back in about, because I remember it real, I mean, it's like there. I was like 9 years old, and I was like past the toy spot, you know. I was bored, lived down in Southeast Township Valley and up in the country. Even from that,
Yeah.
nothing to do. You wanted, and we had like 3 TV stations, and that's if you turned the antenna right. So bored to death on Saturday night, and I went in my toy box, and there was a little bitty tiny plastic guitar, and it was probably worth something today because it was probably some kind of a, you know, cowboy star or something. But it had a crank on it, and then it had one red string, nylon string that was on it. So I just kind of messed around, tuned it up a little bit, and I was kind of playing around. I was getting a song in my head. My mom was in the kitchen with me, and my mom played guitar some, and then she played piano really, really well. And so she knew music and she could sing. And she said, "Were you playing a Beatles song?" And I said, "Yeah." I saw her standing there, and she goes, "I thought so." She said, "You could play music, I bet." And I said,
Hear it.
I could hear it. You know, I could hear that song in my head, and 9 years old. And so from that point on, I needed a guitar. Well, we just did not go out and buy guitars. Of course, back then there wasn't anywhere but Louisville to buy one,
Well,
you
yeah.
know, and we did go to Louisville. I mean, it was like unheard of to drive to Louisville, and my parents wouldn't have gone, but I think, you know, we had a cousin that went usually once a year, and, you know, and so anyway, so can I get a guitar? Can I get a guitar? And that, oh no, we can't afford it, you know, so went on, went on. So I kept asking for the guitar. Still didn't get one. So finally, it was about probably March, maybe another month later, and they said, okay, because we planted potatoes and sold them too as an
Yeah.
off sideline. They said, well, we tell you what, we'll give you part of the potato patch. You can plant, we'll plow it up and everything, and you plant it. You just hold and hill. You take care of the potatoes, and whatever you dig and you sell, you can put that toward your guitar. And I said, okay. So that was like in April we started planning. So I didn't have the money yet, but I wanted the guitar really bad. But I had to wait. So, you know, went on through, worked them and everything. And so I'm sure people were very kind. So dug the potatoes in like in August.
Yeah.
That's a long time. And I got like $50, and it went in the Marengo State Bank at that time in a savings account. Well, that's like August. So I was ready to get a guitar, but there was nowhere to get it. So finally on Thanksgiving Friday, when everybody went shopping and stuff, my cousin took us down, all my family took us down to Louisville. And at that time, there's some really good stores downtown, and everybody would shop. So my dad, myself, and my cousin, we all three got out. We went down Market Street, walked down the street, went into a pawn shop. I found my guitar, and it was $22, and it a kind of a tweed cut strap.
Yeah.
And so and then mom put it in a pillowcase. That was my case. So anyway, so I got my guitar, Harmony Archtop, and that's worth some money today, and I don't have it.
You
Which,
don't.
yeah,
That was
which
going to be
aggravates
my
me.
next question.
Which
Do you
aggravates
still
me. I
have it?
do not have my first guitar, which I always tell people and students, don't ever sell a guitar, you'll be sorry.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that's how I got started in it. And then I got a little chord book that showed me how to play some chords. And my mom, she knew some easy, simple chords, so she started showing me a little bit. But then I see you had Roger Moon here as a guest.
Yeah.
And so I've got to bring him up. And his family, we all lived in the same area, and we actually all went to church together, which was Church Christ, which we did not play musical instruments in the church. We all played outside church,
Yeah.
which is weird, but anyway, that's the way we were. It's funny. I get questioned that all the time. But anyway, all his family played. His dad was a fiddle player, and he was very good, very crude, very old-timey, and knew what he was doing. And then he had an aunt, which was John's sister, I believe, Kate, and she married a cousin of my dad and myself. And so there was some family there, and then there were some other people. They all played mostly bluegrass instruments, but there was some country influence in there too. And there was a bunch of us, and it was almost all Moons or related to the Moons some way or the other. And we got together quite often, if not once a month. I mean, it could be twice a month, but they'd all get together on Saturday night, and we'd play and pitch in a little bit and go to each other's house and stuff. And we'd play music. Very patient with me because I was 9 years old and didn't know much, couldn't switch chords, couldn't play with him, couldn't follow him. And I remember John, one of the first times that I got together with him, John Moon said, and he was a great guy. He said, now we're going to go slow for a while, but then we're going to kick it. So you're just going to have to try to keep up. Well, they did. I remember that. And they went real slow for a couple of verses of a song so I could kind of watch them follow. And then they took off and I was totally lost. And I got like one chord the whole song and just sat there watching their chords and then kept on going back, being very patient with me and kept on going back. All of them were so great. And I can still hear Kate. She always wheezed, a sister, and she played mandolin. She had a great mandolin, like pre-war Gibson or something like that, which was really nice. And I can still hear her say, hang in there, Timmy. She called me Timmy. And we'd get together and play. And they just had a lot of patience with me. I learned a lot by being that way now that I teach. And I always give them credit to the students, always talk about them and about how everybody's had an influence with me some way or the other with my teaching. And somebody said, oh, you're so patient. Well, I didn't take lessons, but I had really good lessons, really good teachers, because that's how I learned to be patient, was through them and see what they did and how, I came about. And that's how I kind of got my start and then started playing from there and went on from there.
So how many instruments do you play?
Well, I play a few, but I don't play all of them very well. But I wish I had more time to work like piano. I teach piano. I know what to do, but I can't do it. I just can't do it this way. But I do banjo, mandolin, guitar, dobro, fiddle a little bit, and I don't know. That's about it that I do teach and play a little bit of cello. Taught cello before, so the way I teach, and I tell all the students, it's the way I teach is that if you learn how to string an instrument, tune it, and you know how it's tuned, then the way I teach, you can pretty well just start picking up the instruments and try to learn how to play it. Now, I'm not saying they're going to be good, but you'll understand the instrument, how it works, and then you can go from there. Now, band instruments, on the other hand, is a totally different story. I am not a band instrument person. I wasn't in band for that, and I'll get to that story maybe later. But anyway, it's totally a different ballgame. But yeah, in that being around other instruments when I was growing up and gave me an interest when I got bored with something else later on. And I saw the need, and I always saw value of where I could be most needed if I learned something else, what I could maybe help to contribute to music, to band or whatever. And so that got me up. If you got time, I'll back up a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's a long time. So, it carried on. And what's really cool is that Valine, this guy, Carol Trinkle, he's passed, but he was just a couple, 3 years older than I was. And I had my guitar and he wanted the guitar and his mom ordered him one from Montgomery Ward. It was an airline guitar, was the name of it. And it was coming in the mail, a guitar coming in the mail in the U.S. mail.
Right.
So it was Christmas break and me and him was just looking for that guitar every day because I had mine. My grandmother lived at the time downtown in Valine. So I was like 12. And so we waited every day. And then there was another guy. He ended up being Dr. Mark Manship in Salem. And he was there in the town with us out of town. But anyway, he played bass and he sang. He was real good. He was like the early day Joe Cocker. He really had a good voice for that. And then Carol was saying, played. So anyway, Carol got his guitar on Christmas break. First thing, we got it open. And we went, there was a grocery store down there and they had pinball in the back and they played euchre there at nights and stuff. So we went back and we took over that back room and we started playing back there. And we played back there all the time. And that started a big thing there. And Mark played bass and sang, and I played guitar, and Carol played guitar.
And that was your first kind of
and
band.
That was the band. And then we, there was one.
And how old were you?
I was 12, and they were like 15, they 16.
Yeah.
And so then we played together there for a while and come up with a name. Carol Trinkle came up with this name, the Discontents.
The Discontents.
I still have a card. Found the card not too long ago. Discontents, and there was all kinds of different names that we get tired of a name, we just change the name. But we played some around, at the school stuff and dances and things like that. Well, there were some other guys that played, And I just ran into one of the guys the other day, Jeff Jones. It wasn't the Jeff Jones State Farm guy that used to be here, but it was the other Jeff Jones. And I ran into him the other day, and we were just talking about the good times we had. And he was a few years older. He's about 4 or 5 years older than I was. So all these guys were like a lot older than me, and
Yeah.
I was like 12. And they asked me if I'd play in a band with them. And so I thought, whoa, these guys are a lot older than I am. And here I am getting to play the guitar with them. So I did, and they were happy, and we had a good time. We just would practice at a house down the road here, and the police would be called several times too noisy. And so we played the prom when I was 12, and so that was pretty cool. And so that was something I can always pass on to students. That's something I got to do when I was 12. And then we just played a lot around. We had a good time. And, like still really enjoy all those guys, remembering the things that we did. And then that went through for a good while, and those guys all graduated. So I was without anybody to play with, no band. So uh, knew a guy from Crawford County, and he was actually related to one of the guys that played with me when I was with the Moons. His name was Larry Crucius is what he went by as he got senior citizen. We called him Abe, and he was always Abe, and he'll always be Abe to me. And but he went by Larry later on. We started playing together. He was good. He was a bass player, but he was a big guy, had big fingers, short, stubby fingers, and he started playing guitar, electric guitar lead. And man, he was good. And so we hooked up together, and he was already out of school, and we played together. And I was like, when I was a freshman, back up whenever we were those bands with those guys when I was in high school, there was like 3 or 4 bands here in the county, in town. There was more of that in Old County. I mean, it's like a big thing to have a band. It's not like that today.
Yeah.
Weird. But anyway, it was a big thing to have a band. And there was one drummer, Steve Apple. And I just ran into him, and I haven't seen him probably for 25, 30 years the other day at Christmas time in a business. And we talked and had a good time talking. He was the only drummer. We had 3 bands, so if somebody was playing, we call Steve, say, "Can you play now?"
So he'd bounce around
Bounce around.
to the other bands in town because he was the only drummer
The only drummer.
in the town.
So his drums were left at our house a lot,
Yeah.
which was really weird because when we practiced, my mom and dad, our house wasn't that big, and it was down in the country by Valine, and the living room's kind of long, and we practiced in there. So the deal was that I could not ride with the guys. My mom and dad had to take me at work.
Mm-hmm.
So they ended up practicing in our house because, my mom and dad worked out of town, and it was hard for them to get me to practice. So the guys just come down there, and they'd leave their stuff. I can still see my dad watching television, and all the instruments would just be left up in the living room in front of the TV, and my dad would be sitting there watching TV and my mom between all the instruments and stuff, and they did not care.
Well, I assume that helped to stabilize and fuel your desire for music too when it was accepted.
Oh yeah. I mean, they backed in any style or what type of music. I mean, they always was okay with it. And they were very supportive. And I always mention that. And a lot of times whenever we played, I always try to tie it in some way that my parents were really supportive and how they put up a lot of stuff. But so the drums were there. So I just started learning to play drums and beating around on them. So then this is really something. My dad, at the place where he was at, and my mom, they were on strike. And so I wanted to sell drums. I don't know how, but anyway, we ended up, while they were on strike, I could have said really nice Ludwig drums. I mean, we're talking expensive, and they bought them. And I was like shocked. And that's how supportive.
Wow.
So I started playing those, and then I traded my electric guitar in on it, and it was a real nice guitar that was about $3,500 today, and I got rid of it, but I wanted to be a drummer. So then now we had 2 drummers, and so me and Steve talked about that. And I said, "I learned on your drums when you left them there, and I stole your job." He laughed. He said, "Well, we need to be because I didn't have time to play." So then I started playing drums, and so it carried through, and then I got into the band thing, which is really funny. I had a teacher that didn't particularly care for the way he taught. I had a bad experience when I was in the 8th grade with it. It's like there's thinking you talk about youth and what music can do. But I was like in front of the class and we had a new math thing. Our class always seemed like they had something new they were going to teach us. And man, I was terrible at anything in school. And he set me in front of the blackboard one day and asked me a question. And it was like 15 minutes, I think. To me, it was only that long, but my hair was standing up on the back of my neck. I was so embarrassed. So he said, well, just sit down then. So I sat down. Well, anyway, so the next year I was put in refresher math, like 2 plus 2, and spent a whole year, my freshman year, already behind, from geometry and algebra. So I just started to take geometry, and it was my sophomore year. Walked in, guess who the teacher was? Same guy. This is 3 years. I had to face this guy. So the band director, Butch Kirby at the time, he was a young guy. And he had this whole vision of the pep band that no one else had around here. I mean, no one. And he come up to me at school one day, and I was in a band at the time. We started a band that I knew everybody, and I was.
You're talking about Paoli High School.
I'm talking about Paoli High School.
Yes.
Yes, yeah, thanks for clarifying that. Yeah. And anyway, Paoli band. And the band we had, I was 16, and I knew a guy from Salem that I had been in touch with the music. He was 36. So I asked Chuck, I said, you want to sing? And he goes, yeah. So he had a twin brother that was a music major at ASU. And he said, I had a twin brother. He said, you want him too? And I said, what's he doing? And he said, well, he plays sax, he plays flute, he plays guitar, and he sings. So I said, yeah, let's do it. So then I had Abe that I was playing with already, and I talked to Abe about it, and the guitar player, and he said, oh yeah, that'd be fun. Well, there was 2 other brothers here in town, Kerry and Kim Fleming, that they both played trumpet, and Kevin played guitar. And then there was John Spear, and he played trombone. So I asked all those guys, I said, hey, you want to do this band thing? And I said, we're going to do a lot of different stuff, and they said, yep, let's do it. So there we had all these guys with all these horns. And me and Abe was doing Jimi Hendrix and Grand Funk Railroad and all this, the Cream, Clapton, all this stuff. It's really pretty heavy stuff. But I wanted to do some Chicago and Blood, Sweat, Tears and do it all together where we'd have like a really wide, range of stuff. And everybody said, sure, so we did it. And so we had, I guess, all range of stuff. Well, Butch Kirby, the band director, getting back to Pale Band, he come to me and asked me if I'd be in the band and pep band. And I said, well, I don't know how to even read music. And he goes, you don't need to. You're already playing the stuff that we do. And Chicago and Blood, Sweat, and Tears, and some other popular stuff, Motown stuff. And I said,
okay, so back up.
Okay.
You don't even, at that point, you didn't even read music. So this was all by ear.
Yeah, all I played by ear. All I played is by ear, just like everybody else that I was playing with. Everybody was by ear. No music, was involved in it. Yeah, good point. So,
wow.
Anyway, he said, I don't read music. And Butch said, well, he said, that's okay. You don't need to, because you're already playing all the stuff that we do. And I want to do Chicago and Blood, Sweat, Tears and all that stuff. So you'd be perfect if you already played the drum stuff to it. And I said, well, that'd be fantastic. So I said, what period does it need? And he said, first. And I said, that gets me out of geometry now, which I hated because I did this. But, I took music over that. So he said, okay, so let's go talk to Mr. Fleming, the principal. So we went and talked to Mr. Fleming, and he said, you have to learn how to read music. I can't just let you go in there and have fun. Butch said, okay, we'll meet after school and we'll learn to read music.
I was wondering where this was coming in, because I know that you do read music.
I do now.
And teach to read music. So I was wondering.
We didn't learn it then. We didn't meet after school or nothing. He got his purpose. So Butch said.
So you didn't learn it then? There it is.
It was all the year. It was all the year with the band.
Okay.
And it was really fun. And we did a thing where had a double bass set of little drums in the band, and it was like a big deal, and it was like a lot of fun, and played all the pop hits and all that stuff, and it, there wasn't none of this easygoing stuff. It was like pretty intense, and the kids really liked it, and they did their best, and great horn section, great everybody, and we had a good time, and we were kind of known for that, and so went on to my senior year, and of course, we were done. And the band kind of broke up. Everybody was graduating college, getting married, and things like that. So it kind of, messed things up. So the band broke up, and me and Susan got married. Just backing up to Susan, my wife,
Mm-hmm.
she didn't play anything, but she was always part of the band since we were freshmen. Since
In high school.
in high school, freshman in high school.
Yeah.
So she would always go with the band. She was always a big part of it.
Yeah.
She would help set up the drums, help carry drums, because it was a big drum set. We had a lot of stuff. And then she ran sound, helped set up sound, run lights, because we had kind of cool crude light show.
Yeah.
Record player, turntable.
Yeah.
Kent Holiday. I never mentioned Kent, but Kent, he passed away too. But he's a fantastic guitar player. He ended up working for Disney Studios out in California. He's buried right here over by the school. He got a Fender Stratocaster on his tombstone. Super guy. We played together when I was like 15. We had another 3-man band with another guy, and we were doing Hendrix and all that stuff back then. So Kent took this record player and had a extension cord ran in it and a light bulbs hooked up to that extension cord. Well, anyway, so we had bare wires sticking out and a hot wire sticking in. So we turned the turntable on and it would spin, right? So when these two wires that were not ground, they'd turn around, they'd hit that power one and the lights would flash. So depending on the speed, we could go 33, 45, 78. We could get those lights like a strobe light. And so here it is, these electric wires that should not have been done going around like that, but we didn't. Nobody got shocked or anything. But so Susan would run that, and then we had overhead projectors, that we'd use at school, and we got permission to use them. So we take mineral spirits or mineral oil and food coloring and put it on plastic on the screen, and then pour it in there and mix it together, and we'd all different colors, and we had like 2 or 3 years from it, and then it would shine up behind the band,
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
That was your stage lighting.
Oh, hippie days, Yeah, and Susan and kids, we'd take sticks, or pencils, and they would move it around and make it warble,
Yeah.
and so it was pretty cool. So we had the strobe light with the record player, which is fire marshal would have been fit with that, and then we had the overhead projectors. Plus, we had some lights, floodlights, that got over here to store, and the older fellow that's not there anymore that ran the store, I walked in there and got some spray paint and some fluorescent spray paint, sprayed floodlight bulbs, and with paint, different colors. And then we bought some different colored bulbs. And
Wow.
I never,
What a story.
we got fluorescent paint, and what are you going to do with these? And I said, well, 2 things. Number one, we got black lights now. We're really good. And I'm going to spray that light bulb fluorescent green. It's going to really show up there, but I've got a pair of shoes that I don't use anymore, and I'm going to spray those fluorescent green, and whenever I'm playing the drums, the strobe lights will and make good green shoes look like they're going 90 miles an hour. So anyway, he laughed. He said, that's just stupid. I remember him saying, he said, it's just stupid.
Well, it worked.
Pretty made a sale,
Yeah.
So anyway, it worked. It was fun. And so anyway, I got all the stories. You're going to be here all night.
I know. It's okay.
So the green shoes, we played at a dance over at the school, and this young lady, I won't mention her name, but I should, but anyway, I won't mention her name.
Okay.
I will. It was Lila Walls at the time, and she came up to me where we were setting up, and she said, where's your shoes? I said, I didn't wear them tonight. She said, well, you should have. And I said, no, I didn't want to wear them. She said, well, where are they? I'm going to go get them. And I said, well, they're at my house. So she knew where I lived. And so she went. She saw her go pick them up. So she went, she knocked on the door, and the guy come and answered the door, and he said, yes, can I help you? And she said, I'm here to get Tim's shoes. And he said, I don't know what you're talking about. Of course, I was friends with their kids too. And so he said, what? And she said, I'm here to get Tim's shoes, his fluorescent green shoes that he painted. And they were playing at a dance tonight. And he said, well, where are they? He said, well, you said he was at the closet there by the front door. And he said, well, you can come on in and look for him. She came back, I couldn't find him. And I said, they were there. She said, I couldn't find them. She went to the wrong house.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So that was kind of funny, you know. And so the guy he asked me, he said, what was she talking about? Those green shoes. So anyway, that was a good laugh. We had a good time over that. So we played around all those dances and everything. So, you know, we had a good time all through high school and everybody graduated. Everybody got married. So me and Susan got married. We right out of school. We just always planned we was going to get married. And so I just kind of, and one of the guys, Abe, he decided that he was going to sell his stuff. And so I bought all of his gear, which was really nice stuff. And I said, if I ever sell it, I'll give you first chance to buy it. So it was there in we had a new house we built, and one of the bedrooms was the music room. And so I started teaching at that point in 1972, and out of the house, out of a bedroom. And I had all that equipment. And then I ended up asking him if he wanted to buy it. I had too much in there, sold it. So that kind of ended that rock era. And that's where I started teaching, was about 1972, there in the house out by the golf course that we built a new 3-bedroom brick home. And so
So,
at night.
so when we talked about you coming on this podcast, I asked you to just think about how many students that you think you probably had over the course of the years. So from 72
Yeah.
to now.
Yeah. And some of it was part-time, but even still though, I'd run even part-time, I'd usually run 12 students, you know, the night and on Saturday and stuff like that. Always starting much. So I have no clue. I could go back for a few years because I've got all my ticket books that I wrote their names in, and I could probably some of these days, if I ever slow down, I could probably go back and research it. But I see people a lot, even adults. But now I've even got some grandkids that I've taught their grandparents, which is really
Like me?
yeah, like you. Yeah, and by the way, for you guys that's paying attention to what we're talking about here, I've had Brandy's we were counting up, and it seemed like it was more than that, but at least 6
At least 6 of our family
of your
members.
immediate family that's taken lessons. And I got to give a shout out to one of them is Logan McKeegan. That kid, he was so good when he was taking lessons, and he could sing, and he did really good on guitar. And I said, man, you need to do something with this. And he just kept on working, and he was with me for a long time. And
I don't really know of a time when he wasn't, when I was a kid. I mean,
you know, he was with me from the time he was grade school, and he was all the way up through when he graduated, I think, from high school in Orleans. And then he went on and he kept working, and he started writing stuff. And now, I mean, he's
well, Logan's Orange County Line
yeah,
is our
it's your theme
ending
song. Yeah,
to our podcast.
I saw that, heard that. It was really good.
Yeah, so we're very excited because like I said, you know, a part of what this podcast is about is understanding why community is important,
Yeah.
why people are important,
Yeah.
why connections are important,
Yeah.
and anything we can do to kind of ground that understanding, we
Yeah.
really want to. And his song was just perfect
Oh, it was
because
very
it's
good.
about Orange County.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And
Yeah.
then it's so tied. It's so many roots
Mm-hmm.
right here.
Right.
Which I think, you know, roots are so important. And I think that's kind of why, you know, music is
Yeah.
important because it builds strong roots.
Well, that's why I pass on the Moon family to my students. I mean, I do all the time. And because they were definitely roots music. I mean, it was all very, very old timey. That just don't. I try to promote that as some of it I can, but the songs today are just a lot harder. Uh, just not as simple to play. Although the kids are just like, and the younger kids that are doing that, they're doing a really good job with me. Um, they're doing a lot. I mean, almost all that's on their own. And I critique them, you know, and they just do all that heavy work and they're practicing. And some of them don't, but it's fun to see them after a while. They really start getting into it and start working at it. And it's fun to see them. I had a fella come up to me at one of our grandson's basketball game in Orleans here a few weeks ago. And he said, I want to talk to you before you leave tonight. I said, okay. And so he came over and he said, I got to tell you, he said, I just want you to know how much I appreciate all you done and where it's gone. He said, we had fun together, and he was just a little kid, and I taught through him all through high school. And he said, I have kept on playing. I've written a bunch of songs, and he says, I've made some connections in Nashville. And he says, I go to Nashville like 2 times a month and play down in Nashville in some clubs down there. And then I've sold some songs to these guys down there. And I was like, whoa, this is pretty neat. And I'm glad you went, but don't count me in there, all that, you done all that on your own, you carried it through. So I may have.
Yeah, but you were a piece of
Yeah.
of that success, though. I mean, it's that, I think, again, that's why it is so important to tell these stories.
It's just so much. One Saturday here not too long ago, had just got through eating lunch, and I looked up and there was a vehicle come in the driveway, and I didn't recognize the vehicle. So I went out and no one was around, and there's these lady and 2 daughters or 2 girls was in the vehicle, and I didn't recognize it. And then this young man come walking around, and he said, Tim. And I said, yeah. And he said, you may not remember me. He said, you're Tim Key, right? And he said, it's been a long time since we've seen each other. And he said, I was like 9 years old, and you gave me banjo lessons. And my parents were missionaries, and we were here for sabbatical, and my dad wanted you to start working with me on music. So we took music lessons from you, or I did. And he said, we were coming back, and he said, they were in Mexico, and he went back to Mexico. And he said, I just wanted to stop by. He said, we were on our way to Greenwood to visit an aunt of mine. And I knew you was out here somewhere in this area. And so he said, I Googled you and found you. And he said, I'm so glad I did, because he said, I wanted to share with you, all you done. And
that's a wonderful story, right?
he said, I'm in Mexico. I'm a missionary now myself. And I learned to play violin, and I play with orchestras and play guitar. And he said, my wife and daughters, I said, well, have them get out. So they got out. We talked, and they were very nice, and very, very nice family. And he said, well, I'm serious. Whenever you can come down, we live in Guadalajara. And he said, we've got an extra house. And he said, you're welcome to come down anytime. And I said, well, appreciate that. That might be, an option. He said, it's safe where we're at, with us. And he said, just, you're welcome to come down. And so I just want to show you appreciation with all I did. And he says, I come back and went to Ball State, and I finished up my master's, and I got my master's degree in music and in orchestra. And he said, that's where I got the orchestra stuff. And he played in our Spanish rock band down there in Mexico. So it's pretty cool.
And you were a piece of that story. You are a piece of that story. And
pretty neat, international.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I
So
would
that's
say
the-
you're famous.
yeah. So, that makes me, kind of, gets to me, when you think about that and everybody. And, it's Orange County. I mean, I don't know how many people I've taught, and there's been a lot, but it's been the support of the community, because they've helped me a lot. I worked on the Lotus Dickey Festival, which is a whole nother genre of conversations.
Yep.
With that 13 years, involved kids. I was president of it. The first thing that I did, which is Golden Mission, was the first meeting we had. I said, okay, the mission of this thing is now changed. It's to focus on trying to get people to play music, and old time music that's getting lost, and to know people and know musicians from the past. And Lotus was one of them that was definitely needed to be known. And I never knew Lotus. I met him one time in the bank, and that was the only time I got to meet him. Never got to play with him. And so unfortunately that I did not get to do that. But anyway, we focused it toward the kids, and the stage had spots where the kids were supposed to play, and we had a good time. And unfortunately, we've had questions about, can we recreate that festival? Can we do that again? Can we just do that festival? And unfortunately, almost everybody's passed on. All those people are gone. And there is a ton of them, and it's sad because they were all in an era that was really focused on folk music and old-timey music.
And right here,
So-
here in Orange County, which is so
And it
impressive.
ventured out, though. I had a guy
Yeah.
at a radio show in Louisville, and when I was with Lick Creek, we played down there at the radio show, and I took a chance, every opportunity that I had, because he played and everything and done his own thing. And I said, hey, would you be interested in coming to the Lotus Dickey Festival and play? And he said, oh, what's going on? So we got talking about it. So that sounds pretty cool. And another friend of his that was associated with him in Louisville, that was another person, big time musician in Louisville. I already got him to play. And so the guy that had the station or the show, he said, what's it pay? And I said, nothing. It's absolutely free. You don't get paid for nothing. He said, really? I said, yeah. I said, I don't have to ask you to do this spot, because I can fill it real quick, because people are asking to do this show and this weekend. And I told him all about it, and he said, I really can't do it for free. And I said, well, and I mentioned the other guy's name, and I said, he don't mind to come. And the other band, they were named Hog Operation at the time, and they played Louisville all over the place. And I said, they don't care to come and play free. And he said, they're coming. I said, yeah, I'll be there. So, so he started coming, and he was here for years and drove up from Louisville. And we had quite a range of musicians. We had from Chicago. I don't know how they found out about it. I don't know. Facebook wasn't that big deal, but anyway, they contacted me, and we had them on the schedule every year, him at Duo. Super nice people. They'd stay at the Braxton when it was in, and they'd stay there. We brought a lot of people in that festival, taught about Orange County history and music, and it was a great time.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about there's right now we can think of 6 of our family members.
Yeah.
So let me tell you a little bit about kind of our side of that. So, or we can talk about it, because I can't remember. So Gracie
There was
started.
Gracie. We didn't count Gracie.
Did we
I
not
knew there
count-
was 7. I knew
We
there was
didn't.
7.
I
We did
thought
not
we did count
Gracie.
her. We did not.
Sorry,
I believe
Gracie.
her out. Yeah, sorry. She I'm going to be in trouble.
You're going to be in
I'm going
big
to blame
so
that
am
on
I.
you, Gracie.
Yeah,
that
but
was
she's the 7th one.
Tim's fault,
Yeah.
because I thought you included her.
I didn't. I forgot Gracie.
I think that she started
Yeah.
lessons when she was maybe 7 or 8, I
Yeah.
think, maybe.
Yeah.
And then she kind of kept with I think she started at banjo, and then she kind of kept with banjo and guitar,
Right.
right? And then I think she kept playing lessons until she was out of high school.
Yeah. And Gracie is your daughter.
Yeah.
We just tell her about.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Grace
Those who
is our
don't know.
middle daughter. Yeah. And then Christian started.
I don't even think I counted Christian.
Well, then who did you count?
I don't know who I counted.
Because I don't know.
You got some kids out there we didn't know about. No.
There's
there
a lot
was-
of
yeah, there
tarot
was a lot
kids
of-
running
I
around,
knew
let me tell you.
I knew you were like in the running. I don't want to bust your bubble, but I've got 2 different families that I had. One I had 11,
Oh, wow.
and one I had 9.
And
That was like not one family. That was like, a bunch of the family, like you.
Yeah.
It was,
cousins and
grandpas,
yeah.
just one had grandpa. And then not too long ago, I had the grandpa, great grandpa,
Yeah.
his student,
Yeah.
his son,
You-
grandson is lessons.
So we started with Christian,
Yeah.
or Gracie and Christian, and
Yeah.
then I think Logan was taking lessons at the time.
Logan
too.
was there too.
Logan
Yeah,
was
at the
there
same
too.
time.
At the
Well,
same-
Christian hadn't started yet.
No, because he was a lot younger.
Yeah, he was a lot younger.
But
he
he's
started.
still taking lessons.
He's
And-
still there, and we have fun.
But do you remember when you called me?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think Christian might have been 12. I don't know.
Yeah.
And said, he's not really practicing. I'm not really, he's not, we're not learning a whole bunch. And I just want you to kind of know that. And I said, I don't care if you ever
Yeah.
play at all. It's the
remember.
relationship.
Remember you talking about that?
Don't worry about that,
Yeah.
because I think we as parents saw the relationship with
Yeah.
you as just another person who can be with our kids, love our kids,
Yeah.
watch after our kids, have a different relationship with our kids.
Yeah.
And that is not bad.
No.
The more we can have people to do that.
Yeah, it always, even though you may have your own kids, but you can still relate, even though your kids may not do what you said to do and all that. But then you've got these other kids. I mean, that's all life. That's just life in general. But, you got these other kids that, you're sitting there and listening to them. And, your kids are, going to somewhere else. And, so we all, everybody's there to help and raise your kids in the community. Yeah. That's what it's all about, and through music.
That's the why.
It's
That's why I think that it is so important. When we were always so happy when our kids wanted to continue,
Yeah.
because it was another adult having a little bit of influence
Yeah.
on a young, impressionable mind. And, I know we still kind of joke, like Christian, he probably plays more in front of us now than he ever has. But both of our kids, like, I paid for lessons for 15 years and I didn't even know if they could even
You
play.
didn't know what they was doing.
I had no idea.
Because they wouldn't do it.
Because
I
they would
never played in
never,
front of my parents either,
they would
unless,
never play.
when I was younger.
Yeah.
I never played in front of
I
them.
thought, well, I assume they're learning something maybe, but if not, it's
It
okay.
just feels weird, I don't, for some reason, whenever you play music in front of your parents, I don't know why, but that's the way it is. But yeah, it's like, it's good for the kids. And it's good for adults. Like I said, it's good for everybody.
Well,
And that was the one good thing about the Lotus Dickey, because it was like, you could stand there. It was another bad story, but I was kind of known as a tyrant on the committee. I had, I had things I did one way, and we had, a 50-minute set. We had 60 bands, 2 stages, 3 days. And we were coming from Chicago and Louisville and just different places, Bloomington, different places, Jasper, Huntingburg, Freddie, all these different towns that were coming to play. And we had a schedule. And so you got 50 minutes, you're on and off. No buts about it. Nobody gets a standing ovation. You just play and that's it. Now if you're nighttime and you're lucky enough to be the last band, that we can go on. It's okay. But you maybe had grandparents coming, and there may be a wedding somebody needs to get to. You don't know what all situations is, so you need to kind of get to the time. And respect everybody else's time and don't run over. So and then the youth. Well, it was. I had a student that was really little. He was like 12, but he was really little. And the size of it matters, because he was really good and he sang and he loved it. Well, there's this group from another town, from a long way away from here. And he come up and asked me, he said, the student, he said, the little 12-year-old, he said, do you know anywhere where I can play with some people and jam around? And I said, well, I saw some friends of mine that's up in the corner there by where Rosalind's store was. They're up there sitting in that courtyard there, like, playing. So why don't you go up there and just sit in with them? It'll be fine. So he went up there and he was up there playing with us. I saw him. Well, then later on that afternoon, one of the folks from that band, they were a band, and come down and said, how dare you send a child up there to horn in on us playing? And I said, really? You talking about Nathan? She goes, yeah. And I said, this kid's good. And she said, I don't care. That was rude. And I said, well, guess what? I said, you're rude being rude right now. I said, the goals of this festival, and if you can look around and see what we've done, is to get as many people playing together as we can get to share experiences and cultures of music and age groups. That's the goal and the mission of this festival. You don't fit it, evidently. So guess what? This is your last year to play. I'm done. So that's why it was not very well liked sometimes, but it had to be done, I thought. Well, anyway, so later on that evening, we had an open stage, and there was these 2 guys that were fantastic musicians. They were tall, both of them, and they were taller than anybody around that was playing. So I looked up, and there they were on stage, and Nathan, the little, he was standing in between them, and you can't just express on that look on everybody's face. He was standing there looking out, trying to watch their guitars where they were changing to, and he was looking at.
And how did they treat him?
Oh, he was part of the group. They asked him to play.
Oh, they did? Okay.
Oh, yeah. Well, so that lady come down, and she said, can I talk to you a second? The one that I told not to come back. She said, can I talk to you for a second? I said, yeah. And she said, I am really sorry. She said, I understand what you're doing, and I see that. She said, what they did for that kid was what I should have done up there. And they got all kinds of recognition for it. So that's what's about.
Well, and you
That's what it's about.
probably
And they were
taught
back.
her a real valuable lesson.
Yeah. And they were an excellent group, and they came back after that, and they came back every year. And we were good friends, you know. So it's all in music, you know. But, you know, you're trying to do a good thing, and you don't want people ruining it. So
But that correction probably changed even the course of their music and the course of how they taught music or how music was expressed or people, because they probably that was probably a really
Yeah.
good lesson.
yeah. Yeah, it's been fun. I've had a good life, you know, in music, and still enjoy it. We had the store up here on the square, right up here from you.
Yes, I
So-
want to talk about this building because you have
Oh
connection
yeah.
to our building.
Yeah.
So
There's a lot of connections to this area right here, this buildings. So let me go back. Mrs. Yusugi, teacher in Pale, everybody knows Mrs. U. So she was really good with kids. She's actually one of the best people that I can say that got me into the music publicly, because she had talent shows every year, and she asked me to play her talent show. And I said, sure. And so I did. And then it ended up later on, you know, the whole band played. And my sister actually ended up singing These Boots Are Made for Walking. And so we played together one night at the talent show, which was kind of a fun memory. But Mrs. U was always really strong about the youth. And so she asked me to play. And so she was always really good in the school. And she decided one Saturday, or that week, that we were going to have a coffee house. And that was a big thing. Big, you know, kind of pre-hippie kind of a thing to have a coffee house. She got it fixed up where the Hoosier Hardware had moved over to the new building, and the old vacant building there was sitting there.
the new building where they are at now, is that
No,
Hoosier
the
Hardware?
old building, which is right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they had moved to the new building back then.
Right.
And built a new one.
Oh, okay.
And then that left that empty.
Yes.
So it was just sitting there.
Okay.
And it was really bad shape.
Mm.
So Mrs. U said, the back room of that place is really cool. We could have a coffee house back there. And we need to make the floor safe. And she said, there's holes in the floor. So we carried in plywood and just threw it down on the floor. You imagine the record player going around with electricity,
I can only imagine.
building that's falling through, and having kids, you know, can you imagine that during the day?
Yeah.
We did on a Saturday afternoon, and our band played, and it was the back end of the Hoosier Hardware. So anyway, so that was like when, I don't know, maybe I was 13, maybe 13. It had to be 12 or 13 right after I was playing with those guys. So then later on, me and Susan gets married, and we're looking for a place to live before we got married, and needed to get something because there weren't a lot of places to rent. So we found an apartment right above you guys there in the center courtyard.
In this building.
In New York at a flat, because it's really cool up there. It had
It
that
is.
little garden out there and a skylight and everything. So we lived in that center apartment, and it's cheap rent.
Yeah.
But we lived there when we were first married. So that's our tie. Then
So did you live in the apartment that faces the courthouse?
no, we were living in the one, if it's still there, that faces the hallway. Actually, you know, there's windows, but they lead to the courtyard that's there.
Okay. So it has went through quite a bit of
Yeah, we had
remodeling up there. I'll have to take you up there and see it.
we had a living room and the little bitty tiny kitchen nailed off. And then we had a bedroom that was screened off with these screened you could see through it, in a bathroom. And that was our little apartment for just us two, $75 a month. So, and it was really pretty cool, except we had to carry groceries up the steps all the time.
Yeah.
We were young, but it still got old. And first dinner we had in that apartment was pork chops. Susan made, never cooked it before in her life, and green beans or corn and mashed potatoes. I still remember that. Took a picture of it actually. But anyway, so that's our tie to your building. And then
Yeah.
we had the store. Later on in the early 2000s, we opened the music store there, and the teaching studio was there.
In this building
In
or the other
the Hoosier Hardware.
Hoosier Hardware building?
No, next door.
Okay.
And
Next door building. Okay.
that was where the coffee house was in, the
Yeah.
back end of that. So we started the music store there, and it grew and grew and grew. And I don't know, people didn't really realize what we were actually doing, I don't think. But we had, I had some boys that were really good teachers and good. I mean, scholastically, they were like really good in school, and they were on the Payola school system. And so we just running out. I didn't have any, our daughter was teaching, our son was teaching a little bit, and I didn't have anybody else to teach him. I had all kinds of people wanting to take lessons. And "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou," the movie came out, and it was like, bang, everybody wanted to learn to play banjos, mandolins, and everything. It was like an explosion.
Yep.
So I asked those boys, they'd taken lessons for me for years. I said, "You guys feel comfortable teaching? I'll help you out, and I'll show you what to do, and you just do my standard thing that I do, and you can do it." They said, "Sure." So I hired them to teach, and they had their own students, and we had a lot of room in there, and we just made some different studios for them to teach in. So we had like, at one time, I think we had 7 teachers throughout that building.
And right here.
We had 280 students coming through there every week, and they were coming from Bloomington, Louisville,
280.
280 coming through there every week.
So then if we add them,
Yeah.
you've had to have probably taught 500,000 for people.
Who knows?
I mean,
it's
in the
per-
course of all of your musical
So-
history.
Yeah, and I taught at that time when we moved into the store building. This lady that had a daycare from French Lick, Mary Ellen Tarr, got to give her a plug. She said, "Have you ever thought about teaching guitar in daycares?" And I said, "No." And she said, "Well, I've got kids here." I said, "Okay, I've got a helper. We've got like 21 kids, and I've already talked to the parents, and they will buy the guitars from you, little guitars, and I want you to come down here and teach music 2 days a week." I said, "Okay." I said, "We'll give it a shot." So I went down there. It's a blast.
Yeah.
And the 2-year-olds, the little kids in diapers and the little bitty kids that were sitting over the playing, but the 2-year-olds were in high chairs, and I still remember seeing them, and they were sitting there listening to everything, and the 3-year-olds on up had guitars.
Right.
And we'd play little kitty songs, and we'd learn stuff, a little bit about music and things like that, but, just start getting going in the music. And all of a sudden, the 2-year-olds were sitting back there, and they're starting to repeat what we're saying. So
Yeah.
they're picking up on it. So
Right.
they eventually get moved up, to 3 years old, and they already got a head start on things. So it grew. So then uh, a guy called me that was running, was it We Care.
Yeah.
One in here, Paoli, and one in the valley.
Yeah.
In the valley. And he said, "Would you think about coming here and doing that?" Same thing. 2 days.
That wasn't the director, was it? Of
It was Todd Martin.
Todd Marshall. I was going to say, that's Todd. Not Todd. I just
Oh, we're
talked
talking about
Todd
getting
a couple weeks ago.
Oh,
Yeah.
God.
Yeah.
So Todd, he called me and said, "Would you do that here?" And I said, "Yeah, let's talk about it." So we talked about it, and he said, "You would do the valley and here 2 days a week." Okay, so I'm doing Mary Ellen 2 days a week. I'm doing you 2 days a week. And then Barbara Drake, she was a babysitter, had a job care down by Tucker Lake. And she's called. She said, "I hear what you're doing." She said, "Would you come here?" I said, "Well, I'll try." We started at 8 o'clock in the morning. So I did 2 a day. So I would do Mary Ellen's, and I'd go over to like the Barbers or something and do her. And then I'd be back at the studio, and I'd have people waiting on me at the studio at 11 o'clock. And I'd start lessons there. And I'd work till like 9 o'clock at night.
I had no idea. So that is early learning and childcare.
Yeah. Yeah,
And-
we don't. Excuse me.
Oh.
Excuse me. We had and Barbara Drake, and then there was Donna Galloway,
Yeah.
and they had theirs, and so they asked me to come there, so I went there. So I did Mary Ellen 2 days a week, and then Barbara Drake, and then the Galloways, and then the We Cares, and I think that's all of them. If I missed one, I don't think I did, but that was it. Then it was the teaching in the store. Like I said, it started at 11, an hour off for lunch at 1 or noon, and then back at it till like 9 o'clock.
It's amazing.
And-
all the students.
Oh,
All the students.
and the kids, the kids that was teaching, they'd start at 3:30, and they would work till like 7:30 and 8 o'clock at night, teaching and one after another,
Yeah.
booked back to back.
Yeah.
So it was, then after that, then Tony Whitaker, actually it was somebody else, well, Donna, Denbell, she was on the school board, and she said, "I'm going to push and see if we can get you to come down here to the school and get a grant to do kindergarten." And she said, you already know a lot of kids from daycare.
Yeah.
So they went to school board meeting. I had to go to the school board meeting and present what we were going to do. And they said, that's great, do it. So they bought all the guitars for the kids, which was 22 kids in a class. There was 4 classes, 88 kids all together. And so we worked, and, they like not paying attention. You thought, oh man, these kids, what am I doing here? And I just kept plugging along with it. So at the very end of the school year, we were going to perform at their graduation for the kindergarten. And I said, look, if you guys are going to get on stage, you're going to do something. So I said, we're going to have a big test, and this is going to go all the way up to the school board members and the principals and the superintendent. I'm going to report to them what you did. So you better do it, and you better get it. So I said, this is going to mean a whole lot for your schooling here, So I gave them test, just my test. And, those kids, they buckled down, and ones that I didn't think they were doing anything, they knew like 3 major chords. They could switch the 3 chords. They did a really good job. They knew all the parts of the guitar, which they didn't act like they even knew. And when I did that test, they come out.
Under pressure, they performed.
It was
They got it.
So they got it. And, I had several of those students that the kindergarten that came and got private lessons after that. So, it really gave them something to look forward to. The parents was back, and them again, parents were back, and then showing them support like mine did mine. So it all just kind of snowballs up. The Moons all working together with me, and all the guys in school that I went to school with that were upperclassmen, and got me involved. And
Yeah.
it's all been about to being together. No matter what age you are, you're gonna play music together.
And, just even with our family, you have had, you tried to teach me violin lessons, and that
You
was
wouldn't
terrible.
practice either.
I know, I know.
So you couldn't get onto your kids.
Well, when I did practice, I've told the story before. My husband said that it sounded like 2 tomcats fighting,
Yeah.
so it was pretty rough. But then we've had our kids and our grandkids.
Yeah.
I mean, that's 3 generations
Yeah.
of musical roots.
Yeah. And it's just not your family. It's been several families.
Yeah, several.
I run across people. I run across people, in the store, and I'll run by them, and I think, they're like overweight, 6 feet tall, and
For grown up.
when I look at them, I think,
Um,
good for me, or they got facial hair
Yeah.
and stuff, and then I've gone back and said, hey, who are you? I said, I'm sorry, but I said, I know you. And they, yeah, you do. And then they tell me their name and tell me that they took lessons from me, or they recognize me, and they say, you don't remember me, do you? And we talk, and it's been good. And I just don't remember everybody, and I've been trying to figure out who took lessons, and, and I had a fellow that the other day, he's having some situations going on health-wise, and we had fun, and his parents, again, there was 4 kids, and they bought them all instruments from me, and they didn't spare any cost, and got all 4 of those kids in lessons, and they continued their lessons and playing their instruments, and one of them, like I said, is just not doing too well, and so I just reconnected with him the other day, and, just telling me, I remembered all those times we had, and parents supported them, and how I thought a lot of their parents, and, for all that, so,
Yeah. That is one thing I think I can really say is instruments and books. We have never balked. We figured it out
yeah,
as parents.
yeah.
If they if they want an instrument or they want a book, we will figure out how to make sure they have it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and he was talking about reading music, again, the students have taught me just as much as I've taught them, if I've taught them anything, but I've had, students go, well, I'm getting bored, do you know how to read music? No. Well, I want to learn to read. So I started learning to read.
Yeah.
And I thought, man, if you're going to do this, and they start asking you, if I'm going to grow, if I'm going to do anything, I need to grow myself. So
Yeah.
I, started learning to read music, and I said, now look, we're all beginning this together. And so that's how I learned to read with the students making me learn to read or play different instruments like fiddle. I had a person want to know if I know how to play the fiddle and to teach them, and then I mean, did not know, but I knew how it's tuned and everything. And I said, well, give me about a couple of weeks and we'll start. So I started working really hard on it. And so started, so
Yeah.
it's other people, not just you, it's other people just all
Yeah.
together.
It's
that
all the
put,
connections. Yeah.
each other
To give and take. Yeah.
to make the music community work and grow. And then people start taking note of it in other areas, in other cities. And they said, well, that Orange County, because we were known, a lot there when the Lotus Dickey Festival was
Yeah.
on.
I remember.
pretty-
Or well, I don't remember, but I mean, I know I've heard of.
Oh, yeah. It was,
Yeah.
And like I said, we've had so many people want to create it, and it's just all kind of everybody's past now. But anyways, good memories. And, it's,
Well, I think those are the stories that need to be
Yeah.
told. It's the importance of having that history, and having people understand the roots that are here. That it's by far one of the most important things. Now we could talk forever, but I
could
know
go on because
I
I've done this for so
we
long.
well we probably need to do this again. I need to have you back on here, and we need to talk kind of part two
Yeah.
at some point. I do think we probably need to be wrapping it up now, but
Yeah. I
um, I do appreciate you being here and telling just even a small part of
Yeah.
this musical history right here.
Thanks for having me. You don't know how much I appreciate you having me. It's it's something that's close to me.
Oh, yeah. It's all
So
who you are,
yeah,
and all of the people that you have had a small influence on.
yeah.
That equals big things.
Oh,
Those small influences matter.
yeah. Well, here's like I said, Susan never played anything. We're married, my wife and I, and she'd been around the music since we were freshmen, helping out with the bands and all that stuff. And then she turns around one year for Christmas, and I said, "Did you get everything for Christmas that you wanted?" And she said, "Well, I thought she was going to get me an upright bass." So I ordered one the next Monday, and she started playing, and that's been about 25 or 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And we ended up playing in a band pretty close to when she started playing, and we played in the group that for like 18 years ourselves, just me and Susan and some other folks. And we played like about 365 days a year. We played about out of that. We played 38 shows a year, every year for about 5 or 6 years. So we were busy, and mostly down in Kentucky. And so that my connection and her doing it as a couple,
Yeah.
even made it grow even that much more important. So yeah, you never know who you're going to connect with, how it's going to work out, and so we have fun playing together, and that just shows where we can go. And as you say, the why.
That's why. Right. Yes. That is exactly why. Well, thank you
You're
for
right.
being here.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right.
It's those little things